Yeah.
Welcome to Tony at 12. I'm Tony LeBlanc, and today I'm in conversation with Chris MacGregor, Managing Director of Alderney Electricity, and we're going to discuss the current energy matters, including electricity, diesel, and kero prices. Good to see you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Tony. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
Can we start off then with Brent crude? It's got around about $70 a barrel at the moment. Now, under the previous regime, you used to work on the basis of what you paid for the current shipment would be reflected in the bills. Is that still the case?
Yes, that's still basing the fuel surcharge on the price of oil as it comes in each shipment, and we're
Yep.
expecting another shipment at the beginning of September. And actually, the price has dropped. I think it's around about $65 at the moment of Brent crude, anyway.
Yeah, I looked
So
last
that will be
week. So
reflected.
yeah, yeah.
Continued.
So
Yeah.
it's going through a period of stability, the oil price.
Well, relatively.
Yeah,
I mean, I suppose you could say that 10 years, I suppose it's averaged out at about $70, with the peak of 120 in back end of 2022. So,
yeah,
nearly double what we are now. So it's come down from that.
yeah, yeah. Okay. So when you sort of look at these things, what's the important bit? Energy security for Alderney or decarbonisation?
Oh, that's a great question. I think they actually go hand in hand in my book. I mean, there's three factors, I think. Energy security,
Yeah.
there's resilience on the island as well, and then there's growing the economy. And I've been asked to do that. Part of the energy policy is to maximize the use of renewable energy to minimize the carbon footprint while increasing grid stability and decreasing costs. So, it's
Not
a
too
magic
much,
trilogy
not
there.
too much. But you're not doing a
No,
milliband. You're not doing
I
a
mean,
milliband.
I do. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I mean, looking at Ed Miliband, he's prepared to sacrifice everything for, net zero. And I don't see how that works.
I mean, it's not for me to comment on his policies, but I mean, I would challenge that slightly in that we have to lower our carbon output. We have to accept that the global climate is changing, and we have a role in that. So, if I just describe our carbon output on Alderney itself,
Yeah.
as a small island, we burn nearly 4 million liters of diesel every year. In fact, it's over that if you add in the diesel for transport. Now, 4 million liters of diesel creates over 9,000 tons of carbon, which would require us as an island, if we were just trying to offset that carbon, to plant 500,000 mature trees every year. So if you lined them up, they would go around the circumference of Albany 60 times. And we'd have to plant that just to capture the carbon that we burn or we create through burning. So, although we're small, we have an effect and we have to be considerate of that. But I
Did
would I would agree that we can't sacrifice everything to achieve that. So we have to do it in a really balanced way. And that's part of the challenge of transition. So how do we get to a point where we can reduce our carbon output, so decarbonize what we do, ensure that we've got better air quality, so less air pollution, and more efficient systems that we're running because we've electrified things, whilst also trying to keep the prices down. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
challenge.
yeah, yeah. That number you gave me in terms of diesel burn, that doesn't
Yeah,
include kerosene, does it?
yeah, it does. Yeah,
It
so
does.
2 million,
Okay.
yeah, 2 million liters of diesel in the station for the electricity, and then
Yeah,
another 2 million, roughly 2 million for kerosene heating,
yeah.
and then there's additional, probably nearly another million, but on transport, 500,000 on transport. But it's a lot of fuel we're burning, and people don't think about it. That those generators are going all the time so that we can have the privilege of electric lights coming on.
Well, it's very good of you to provide the service for us.
Well, I mean, it's not me, but it's a good point, and I think maybe at this point, because we've jumped straight into crude oil, but I think it is worth acknowledging and thanking what James Lancaster and the team have done over the last decade, because without the work that they have done to stabilize the grid, build the substations, and bring in the energy management system, and automate the power station, we wouldn't be in any position now to be able to transition. So, hats off to what James and the team have done over the last decade,
Couldn't
because it's
agree
been
more.
really,
Yeah.
really tough to do that.
Yeah. James had this concept of 3 by 3, and
Yeah.
essentially part one was solar, later part two wind, and part three batteries. Is this still on your agenda?
Yes, although I've described it differently, or from what I've read coming into the role, and I've only been in the role for 5 weeks formally. But from what I've read from the energy policy and the island plan, 3 by 3 to me means a target to reach 30% renewables in 3 years. So at that point, it would be 2026. So we're two-thirds of the way through that period, and we haven't yet got any AEL or state-backed renewable into the grid yet. So it's very much on my mind and on the agenda to achieve that. So we need to move faster to demonstrate the intent of AEL and to embed in our own staff and the people on the island the idea that this is possible, and we're going to do it, because we don't want to just see targets that are set in the future that we never seem to achieve. We need to get on with it and do it now.
Yeah. Okay. So have you actually selected a site for solar?
Yes, a lot of evaluation has been done around that, and it's about 12 acres of site just south of Ian Tugby's yard.
Yeah.
That has been ring fenced in all of the environmental planning that we've been doing and preparation for a planning application. But we haven't selected a development partner yet, and we don't own the land yet. We can't do those things until we've got planning permission, and those need to wait for the environmental impact assessments to be done. So there's a lot of work, that I think probably more work than most people anticipated when this project started, because it's now later than a lot of people would have liked. But it's one of the things that we're doing. So the solar farm is an option. It's not the only option, and I think that's really important to highlight.
Let's stick with solar, Joe, though, just for a minute.
Sure.
What would your development partner do apart from putting finance in, and what would they want back?
Well, that depended on the commercial route that we took to fund it, or the route that we would take to fund it, whether that be commercial, it could be a community fundraise, it could be going to our bank. But the development partner would work with us to actually implement the equipment, so embed it into the ground, commission it, or mobilize and then build it and then commission it. And it depends on the contract that we sign at the time, whether or not we build it with someone else's equipment, or whether they come in and build it and run it for us, whether we do all the operation and maintenance. And those things are not bottomed out yet.
But the intention is to try and bring down the price as well as giving us security, yes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, for me, that's absolutely vital. And it goes back to your first point, decarbonisation by putting the prices up is not what the island needs. We can't have more expensive electricity than it currently is. For our own stability and economic development, we need to bring the prices down considerably. And I think there's real potential to do that with an optimized mix of renewable energy.
The idea, though, of having a site south of Tugby's, okay, is obviously a departure from the island planning situation, isn't it? So is that going to make it more difficult to get planning permission? Because effectively, the planning committee are going to have to say, right, this land is no longer agricultural or whatever it is, it's going to be light industrial. Do you see a problem there?
Well, I think that is that complexity has increased the time that all of this has taken to happen. And so there are several factors in that. We've got the planning itself, the process, and the partners that we've got to put in place. Because it was in the designated area, or still is in the designated area, we've had to conduct environmental impact assessments on things like heritage and visual impact and ecology. Those are all ongoing, and in fact, or mostly done. And there's a stakeholder consultation ongoing at the moment. So that's one aspect. And then you're right to point out that the planning law adds another level of complexity in it, which is why recently the ordinance was changed to explicitly allow the production of electricity or the generation of energy within that area for a temporary period. So we can now apply,
Right. Okay.
because had we not changed the law, or had the law
No.
not changed, our planning application would have been rejected straight away. So that was just another one of the hurdles that's had to be crossed.
Do you foresee any challenges from the public on this?
Well, there haven't been any formal challenges that we haven't dealt with to date. So
Yeah, but when
there's
it
been
gets to
plenty of
planning,
opportunity.
people are going to be able to attend that meeting and
Yeah,
give you their 10 bobs worth at that point.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, yes, and they've absolutely got a right to do that. I think there's been plenty of opportunity in the last 2 years to express opinions around this particular idea. And we have to expect that challenge. But I also think that what we're doing now is looking holistically at the whole range or the whole package of renewables that we can use, or we might be able to use over a short time frame. And that has really led to the question in my mind since I've arrived as to whether or not a very large agrivoltaic farm is the only answer. Do we have to put all of our eggs into that basket? Because what I'd ideally like to see is the agricultural and fertile land of the island being used for agriculture. And so where we can, or where we have to use them both together, we want to do that and provide a way of ensuring that that land can be returned to agriculture or is used simultaneously for both photovoltaic and agriculture. But the question I think we need to ask is, do we need to use all of it at once, or can we slice it up differently and use a smaller portion of it if we start to invest in other renewable technologies simultaneously?
Because solar's okay in the summer, although despite the fact the UK is having a heat wave today, we've had cancellations due to fog, so therefore the sun penetration would be on the low side. But in the winter, of course, it goes completely out of the window, doesn't it? It's down to 5% to 7%, which is obviously of no use at all at that point.
I mean, it's of some use, but you're right. It's a very expensive way of producing electricity in the winter.
Mm.
And both all renewables to a certain extent are difficult to manage. They are intermittent and unpredictable, which is why an optimized mix is always good, because in the summer you might have lots of sun, although there are those days where there's not, it's raining, it doesn't work at night. But in the winter, we've got amazing wind potential, and then you've got tidal to consider as well, which is much more predictable as a renewable.
I saw a business bulletin today on television whereby the proposal is to put a satellite up in space, pick up the sun's rays, no fog up there, by the way, and
Yeah,
then direct it by way of a microwave down to a receiving unit. And they were
yeah.
saying that, they thought they could power an awful lot of homes using that technique. Now, obviously, it's not available for Alderney. What do you think of it as a concept?
Well, it's been around for a while as a concept. I mean, I
Yeah.
think Asimov might have written about it in some fiction some time ago. But yeah, I think if it can be brought in, then that would be wonderful. But it's like all of these new technologies, it needs to be tested and proved.
Well,
But
I'm still waiting for nuclear fusion,
yes, yeah, absolutely.
and
Well,
I've been waiting a
UK
long,
is
long time, a lifetime.
UK is doing some good work on that at the moment.
Yeah.
And people do talk about, there are some very small nuclear reactors that are being investigated. Rolls-Royce is doing something similar or something in that area at the moment, and there are always people who want to come to Alderney and test their equipment. So there could be a potential for Alderney to get a download from the sun at some point, but I think we're just going to have to pick it up on normal photovoltaic arrays or panels for the time being.
So you don't see a nuclear submarine tied up to the breakwater as being an option, and second-hand one, of course.
I think it's been discussed, hasn't it? I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it was a conversation.
One of the zany ones. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get on to wind power. Now, we won't look at Mr. Samuel Turner's
Yeah.
proposal. That's separate. I'm talking about wind power on the island.
Yeah.
James was hopeful that you could actually erect two or three, well, to quote President Trump, windmills up at Fort Albert. Do you think that's a possibility?
Yeah, I think Alderney is really well suited to wind generation because, as everyone will tell you, it's blinking windy here sometimes, and
It
in the
certainly
winter,
is. Yeah.
there's real evidence of that. And so, there's a lot of modeling has been done, and we've been working with a guy called Dr. Danny Coles from Oxford and John Stokes, who is the stalwart of our design here on the island for the generation and the energy management system. And they've been doing some modeling together recently about what the optimum mix of renewables might be. And we've done them with and without wind. But when you add in wind, it means that we can reduce the size of the batteries that we need, and we can reduce the amount of diesel that would burn over the winter when the solar isn't picking up as much. And so, where they're placed, I think, is still for debate. But Fort Albert to me does seem like a really good location. Although there is another plan to put them at the back of the island, although I think the logistics of doing that are going to be really difficult. But they don't have to be huge. They don't have to be absolutely enormous. I think James and Cam Cairnduff went to Scotland and made a really good video about wind on the island up there.
Yeah.
And you can see that they're not massive. To me, I think they're really elegant symbols of a forward-thinking island that wants to transition. And ultimately, it's about the bottom line as well. We don't have to have them, but if we want cheaper energy, then we've got an amazing supply of free wind. So we could utilize it and get a greener environment simultaneously.
James was talking about the possibility of second-hand units, which could actually be tilted over for servicing down to ground level. Have you seen those?
Yeah, he showed me the designs as part of our handover. And I think that's a really good idea because inevitably the costs of installing wind on this island is going to be higher than it might be on the UK mainland, for example. And we have to be considerate about the weight of anything that we take off a boat and, the maximum lift that the crane can manage. And then wherever it is, we have to get it into place and build it. And then we'll have to maintain it because, renewables are wonderful, but they're not perfect. They solar panels break, inverters break, batteries slow down, wind turbines break. So there will always be an operation and maintenance cost with these things. So where we can look at reducing that by doing something simple like using levers to pull it down and maintain it on the ground would be better.
Yeah, it's got to make sense, hasn't it? Obviously, if you're using renewables and you've still got the power station in operation, there's going to be a time, isn't there, when the amount of solar energy is making a major contribution, so you don't have to have too many engines running. But at that point, the cloud comes over or the wind stops blowing. And that's the point where you're going to need batteries, isn't it, to actually cover that period where it takes to actually start up other engines. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So we want to try and, if our ambition is to have as little diesel burnt as possible, then we want the fewest numbers of generators operating at any one time. And we need to cope with that intermittency that you talk about. You know, the cloud comes over or the wind stops blowing.
Yeah.
And that's why, for me, tidal is a really important renewable, in that is the most predictable of all renewables. And so we should be thinking of that as our primary renewable on the island. And the thing about Alderney is that we're not connected. There is no connection to an infinite grid. So what we can't do is immediately backfill that gap that caused by the intermittency by connecting to somebody else's electricity. We can't do.
Sure.
We have to generate it.
Yeah.
So you're right.
Yeah.
We have to have the generator on, or we have to have some batteries that are really well positioned, well managed, and the right size, with the right software set up, so that they can instantly provide that electricity into the grid, and we don't lose the frequency. And so we're looking at batteries, large scale batteries of about 1.5 to 2 megawatt hours capacity. And they'll probably cost around £1 million to put those in place. But they are essential in the mix of renewables that we have.
So would you go as far as to say then batteries first, then solar, then wind? Because if you haven't got the batteries, you can't do it, can you?
We definitely want some batteries. Yeah, we will. We're already looking at what they might be and when we can start to purchase them and how long the procurement cycle would take. But they're a necessity for all of the different types of renewable options we've got. So we definitely need to get some in.
So they're the starting point, really, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm looking now at the time frames and what we can do in the next 2-year window. So if we go down the solar voltaic route, or a large array, we won't have that until the winter of 2027, given the timings that we're currently working on. So we've got over 2 years between now and that coming online. And that's around the same time frame that we're looking at any tidal option as well. Or indeed wind, if that was in the mix. But those two are more mature in our planning. So we've got over 2 years at the moment, and therefore we need to think about the infrastructure that we need to connect those renewables into. What do we need to build and get ready for that? Batteries are part of that solution, but also what can we do in a much more local sense to excite people and to start using renewables in our grid. And that's where domestic solar and some small scale commercially roof mounted solar will probably be in our mix. Well, it is in our mix, actually. So we're thinking of putting a few panels on the top of Vanel's, which is the building I'm now currently sat in, our office, and some on the front of the power station. And we're also thinking about how we can help those with solar panels on the island feed in to a grid over the next, in this window of 2 years. You know, what do we need to do to the grid to allow that to happen for those that have got them? And how do we buy that cheaply off them?
Are there many people that fit that bill?
Well, there are more people on this island with solar panels than I think anybody had previously thought, but we haven't done an audit on it. So no one actually knows how many panels exist on the island and what they're producing, and indeed whether they're doing it safely. So one of the things we have to do pretty sharpish is a full audit to find out exactly the answer to those questions, because that will help us ensure that we have a safe and stable grid.
But I've had panels for years just to provide hot water, not interested in electricity at all. I think there must be a lot of people that probably fit that category, where you may think that the solar panel you see is capable of producing electricity, whereas in actual fact all it's doing is acting as a heating element.
Yes, so there's lots of thermal PV, thermal solar, and then the photovoltaic solar as well. And we will have to make a distinction between the two, but we definitely need to know what's out there, because we've had some experiences over this year where people have employed people from off island to come and fit solar, and it's been fitted or installed badly, not commissioned, and it's leaking into our system, which is making it unsafe for us because it's constantly live. So we've instigated a new application and commissioning process. So when people are interested, they can now come in and we can actually take them through the journey and we can commission that work. So we know that it's there and we know that it's safe and we know what inverters are being used and how much potentially could be generated and how much in time we may or may not be able to take from those panels.
But given the cost of actually putting in a system, I can't see how it's worthwhile over here as an individual. My first bath cost £3,000. Second one was 1,500.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I mean,
and that was years ago.
Yeah, but what you've highlighted, I think, is that as technology improves and the market adapts and becomes more mature, the prices go down. So we've seen a tremendous fall in the price of solar panels globally.
Yeah, appreciate
and they'll
that.
probably go down again next year because there are Chinese factories and others making more panels than the current demand. So we're going to see the price go down. Batteries are improving. And overall, I think people can be quite excited about it. They look at the normal price of electricity on Alderney and think actually that it's going to be worth it. And that provides a challenge for us too, because we need to have equitable access and costs of electricity on the island. So we can't just have people who have the money and large roofs having cheap electricity. We need to be able to make sure that everybody has electricity that is reducing in price. And so that's where we'll have to think about tariff reform as well. In fact, we'll do.
Well, we had that down as one of the list of topics, tariff reform, something that James was trying to get sorted, but it never materialised. But I think essentially it was a question of putting up the standing charge and bringing down the unit price.
Yeah, essentially that's it. We need a simpler and fairer system. And the best way to do that is copy best practice from elsewhere. It's a very complicated system we've got at the moment. And when we talk about a standing charge on Alderney in Tariff C, it's not really a standing charge as I know it, or many people in the UK would know it, which pays for the fixed costs of the generation and transmission and distribution of electricity. And that's where we need to get to. So I think we need two different items on your bill. One will be looking at the costs of those, the fixed costs that everyone will pay equally.
Yeah.
And we can weight it depending on income or house size, all to be decided. And the other aspect is just based on your consumption, so how much you choose to use. But by doing that and moving to that system, those people with large houses that aren't here very often would end up contributing more to the local island infrastructure. Because at the moment, they would just go on Tariff A and pay a very little amount for the ability to switch on the lights. And actually, that puts an unfair burden on those who are here all the time.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's high time that was looked at. And I won't go on to other issues that I have of a non-electric version. Now, what about smart meters? Do they have any place here?
Yes. Well, and not only do they have a place, but we're going to bring them in over the next couple of years. We're working with Guernsey Electricity to piggyback off their very large order because we get great economies of scale by buying with them. And they will be much more accurate for the user. They'll allow us to do build things like an app or a website that you can pay. You can see how much electricity you're consuming, but also they'll work with us. We'll be able to read them and see much more about the quality of the network that you're taking your electricity from. So they'll help with our operation and maintenance of the grid as well, and they'll enable more renewables to be integrated into the system too.
So they are going to be part of the future from that point of view. Now, how do you actually wean people off kerosene? Because the fact of the matter is most of the island relies on kerosene for its heating. I know that heat pumps are an alternative, but it's the sheer cost, isn't it?
Yes, it's a really tricky one, and I don't expect it's going to happen in any time soon. Because a lot of the diesel or the kerosene heating is very efficient. Actually, you can it's done some great work over the years to increase the efficiency of those boilers. But I think we are going to move in that direction. And there's a couple of issues. One, it'll be about the cost of electricity that we can provide, because the cheaper it is, then the better the benefit for the
Yeah,
individual to
yeah,
swap, of course. Um, the other aspect is what people prefer. Do they want to smell diesel or kerosene in their gardens and in the roads as they walk around the place? And do we want to pollute because of it? Um, but also, how do we actually get the heat into some of the older houses in the center of town, I think, and how do we keep that? So there's another aspect to all of this as well, which is who is responsible and how do we conduct an energy audit on the housing stock that we have, and how can we help with that? How do we help people understand that with a little bit more insulation, they might not have to heat their house as much? With a better design for some of the new houses, again, they might not need to put a kerosene boiler in the first place. They may well be able to go straight in with a ground source, a heat pump. But there are new technologies that we're looking at too. So there's a very thin graphene material that you can have as underfloor heating. It's about 2 millimeters thick, and it heats up instantly. You can stand on it with a stiletto or rip it, and it won't cause any issue. And it's quite expensive at the moment, but of course, as the price of electricity and that technology develops, we'll be able to put more of that into some of the older housing stock, and that will actually get rid of the damp in some of those thicker walls that exist at the moment.
yeah. It's quite a complicated equation, though, isn't it? All things considered. Now,
Yeah, it can take a while.
we did mention geothermal
Yeah.
as another energy source. Not for one moment going to suggest it here, because in Southampton they've had one that's been going since 1986. And to get to the hot rocks, they've had to drill down 1,800 meters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if when you're going that far, you can actually end up producing electricity because you're bringing up steam, and you
Yeah,
can
sure. Yeah,
you can turn turbines
yeah.
and actually, but you may have to go down much deeper than that. We have had a visit recently from a company that was introduced to us by Jersey Energy Technology called Strada Geothermal, and they are well known for deep and cost-effective drilling. And they have said that they think there's a potential to drill only down to about 400 meters and produce heat that we can then use to either use for a very small amount of domestic heating, or put back into some form of agricultural use.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So we're going to test it. I mean, I think if they can come here and we can find some land for them to test it on, I think it would be really interesting to see whether or not we have hot rocks or cold rocks, and it could be an option that we look at in the future.
And with all of these things, coming back to the batteries, what's to stop you leasing them? Can you lease them?
Yes, yeah, there's options. A buy or lease. I think it'll just depend on what sort of battery we end up going for in the
Hmm.
future, and the deal that we achieve with the supplier.
But you're hopeful on that.
Yeah,
Coming,
I mean, I
I,
haven't done all the work on it yet, but it's at the top of the list.
and jumping around still further, Spiralis, they're still around, are they?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, Spiralis is the tidal firm that we've been talking to and have been on Alderney for around nearly 2 years, I think now, talking to the States of Alderney. Um, and actually, their maturing technology is one of the things that has caused us to take a pause and have a think about how we develop this optimized mix, and the fact that we should be thinking about tidal as our primary renewable on the island. Because even in the last 3 or 4 months, that we've had some really good news from them, and about what they're doing. So we know that they have had their designs signed off as architecturally sound from naval architects. We know that they're going to design them and they'll be commissioned as boats or ships.
mhm.
Um, within those design parameters. They've been given a couple of or 6 berths at the European Marine Energy Centre in Orkney. And so when they've built those first vessels, they're going to sail them up to Orkney and they'll plug them in next year. And we've been told that we can have access to their performance data and we can monitor how they're working over the course of next year. And that's really good for us because we can then look at what they're producing and how they're doing it, and we can assess how many we need and whether they'll still work for us and over what time frame. So the earliest, I mean, if it all works, which it looks very positive at the moment, and if it does work, it's going to produce the cheapest tidal energy that has been produced so far, which makes it very attractive. And in Alderney, that will be fantastic. And so we could be looking again in around 2027, getting the first barges down here to provide us with a domestic supply.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll have to see what happens. Because we've heard, a lot of us have heard it all before, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, this is open hydro and everybody like that. They've been,
I think,
all gone wrong for some reason or another.
I think it's all because they require such great subsidy to actually produce electricity. So Borealis started at the other end of the equation and wanted to build a system that could produce electricity from tidal and then be sold into the market at day-ahead prices, so without a subsidy.
Yeah.
And if they can achieve that next year in Orkney, then that's fantastic news.
I'm afraid to have to say so. We've run out of time.
Well, Tony, thank you very much.
It's been great talking to you. Did they tell you have to come on every 3 months?
No, I'd love to. That's very
contracts in the post. Anyway, great pleasure. Thank you very much, Chris, and keep in touch.
Thank you very much, Tony. Have a good day.
Thank you.